nangbe chulu la tako go yapu yona tani tentang kera chesho chenpo chikde leji shakcha sekende tani pomo jorwala tani dambi chu drup topa tan sanji ki gopon top topa ki nyamlan yuores ko sonko tani te sanji chomden degi sombe sanga dorji tepe yang dapa la drewa yona mena kandi meso kandra yuores
yuores tata saji nanji nanjalame chu tene nanjalame chi nuna haji maji nime chi nune tene maji to nime chi niga zondoga te tene zondoga chi laji soje desu soje jego nune zo chechi chire soje chande de kari dreba yuwa desu ina tene nyasa na kete tozo kala kaba desu
Yes, there is a connection. Rinpoche said, you'll remember I spoke previously of 4 major classes of Tantra. The Kriya Tantra, Charya Tantra, Yoga Tantra, and the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, or the 4th being the Tantra of Unsurpassable Union. And furthermore, I mentioned that this 4th category of the Tantra of Unsurpassable Union was divided into Father Tantra, Mother Tantra, and Non-Dual Tantra. Principally in the classes of Mother and Non-Dual Tantra, there are certain techniques involving sexual union as a basis for spiritual practice, which are technically termed karma mudra. That is the Buddhist technical term for these, a collective term for these practices. They are known as karma mudra. And in fact, they are part of a greater cycle of teachings known as teachings on the 4 mudras. These are 4 different approaches to various aspects of our experience that can be transformed. So Rinpoche says, the teachings do exist as they were taught by the Buddha. They do constitute an authentic part of the tradition. The only difficulty is getting people to practice them purely.
Then on to check out the plan, the lack of hot on conquerors, out of the hot, then but I saw those kind of conquerors, then you don't things and numbers of things, so Jepa on top of us, things and Hasapala, Nipa Temba Sata, John Tapacas, and get yellow, then Tomo conquerors. Tomo lazum, tomo maala sato, tila zabala sato, te lazo nila ronga tone, lisi la dewa seli pati kone, tene susu dea chini tila te, rubala patapa, rubala gawa, rubala nyakala patapa, nyakala choka, nyakala dewa patapa, cheparche gawa, There is honest Pame, Hachichipe Gawa, National Kala, Gato no Mamato, on the Shachachiman, number Jata, then remains at the Hayo, the General right there, then Sonene, Deva, Nika, Yakana, Drama, Dramana City, a young rank, take it in a zoom, dry, send the so called. Kilata, me parts are Zuntapa, Shallow Mashaw, Zuntan Yan Rantapa, then Lila Tronsona, and Zatu Tani Liliaris, Tatachi, Kilata Chasana, then Tatana Mamantope, Topa Chepas, after Shaja Chimudu, Tagiaris, Pesses at Tomo, me Palashone, Tener, Valentana, Traditional. Rinpoche
says, since you asked, if you're interested in how these practices would traditionally be approached, first an individual would be required to go through a fairly long period of purification to purify their body, speech, and mind of the effects of harmful actions and to purify obscurations in the mind, as well as to augment various positive qualities such as merit and awareness. A system of teachings and practices known as mundro, or preliminary practices. Following that, the person would have to receive an authentic empowerment into one of these major tantric cycles from a qualified teacher, and then receive fairly extensive teaching in first the deity meditation connected with that cycle. And then the person would cultivate the experience of their own physical body as the form of the deity, experiencing that as the union of form and emptiness. And this isn't something you merely intellectualize, you actually directly experience your physical body as the body of the deity, as the union of form and emptiness, with no self-nature of its own. You learn to experience through this practice your speech as the union of sound and emptiness, and this is accomplished in part by the recitation of mantras, often hundreds of thousands or even millions of mantras over, again, a long period of time. As well, you begin to acclimatize yourself to an experience of your ordinary mind as the union of intelligent awareness and emptiness. And you gain control over various states of samadhi, or meditative absorption, both mundane in their application, such as the energies of pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and wrathful or exorcising energy, and also a more sublime experience of the true nature of mind, and this must be developed and purified until it becomes very stable. Following that, the person would practice what is known as tummo, or the inner heat. And there are various stages to this practice, again, all of which take intense practice over a period of time. There is the initial stage of practice, which is known as ignition or blazing of the heat, the initial stirring or generation of the inner warmth at the level of the navel. And as this warmth begins to pervade the body, there is an energy concentrated in the crown of the head which begins to flow downwards. And through the use of this technique of tummo, a person becomes extremely proficient in controlling the flow of energy between these two poles in the subtle body. And through this, there is an experience of bliss and warmth that is generated and which permeates the whole mind-body complex of the individual. As one refines this technique and becomes more specialized or more masters the technique more thoroughly, one becomes able to focus upon the various chakras in the subtle body and to, for example, draw the energy from the crown of the head down to the throat. And when this is successfully performed, there is an authentic experience of joy, which is simply termed joy, technically. When the energy is further brought down to the heart chakra, there is the experience of sublime joy. When the energy is drawn down to the navel chakra, there is the experience of what is known technically as special joy, or an even more intense joy. And then when the energy is drawn down to and contained within, not lost, but contained within the genital chakra, there is the experience of what is known as co-emergent joy. And in order to successfully practice karma mudra, a person must first attain the yogic mastery of this technique so that the energy can be brought down to and held in the genital chakra without being lost in the ordinary process of orgasm. And then the person is able to cultivate a non-dual, non-conceptual state of awareness. And then further, there is a process whereby that energy is raised again from the genital chakra to the navel chakra, from the navel chakra to the heart chakra, from the heart chakra to the throat chakra, and from the throat chakra to the crown of the head. And so the process is reversed. And the preparation for karma mudra practice, for this so-called sexual yoga or sexual technique, involves mastery over the ability to consciously lower and consciously raise the energy without losing it in the ordinary process of sexual orgasm. And then, once the energy has been raised, it is consciously directed throughout all of the various subtle channels of the body, which the Buddhist system numbers as 72,000 subtle channels for the nadis, or subtle channels for the passage of energy throughout the body. And with the realization of and mastery of that technique, from the Buddhist point of view, one arrives at the more ultimate purpose of the whole thing, which is not any particular sexual orientation at all, but which is the realization of Mahamudra, not simply the cultivation of that particular experience. And so it involves a very conscious, very committed process over a long period of time using fairly specific or highly specific techniques in order for a person to truly realize the meaning or truly realize the value of these sexual practices. as the translator, I just must say that's perhaps the most complete description of the process that Rinpoche has ever given in public.
되네. 다 됐어. 근데 나도 사자 거네. 도와도 바쁘나 자가는 잡고인라부터 되네. 니모 좀 나자다. 참 나자다. 로트고 되네. 도와도 해볼 때만 지내도 공부하면서 달라고 para는 라즈마 발라서 되는지도 되네. 거기서 좀 바쁘시 받아서 제야르스 달라고 손을 한번 와도 사진을 손잡고 붙어서 달라고 나와야리 나서라 달라 레고 로타지 인사르스 되네. 다다바 강위에 땡한서 많아 다가서 있잖아 되네. 밤에 텔라도 쇼나 또 소원도 지대도 니바천시 자도 제지르스 자도 제지는 또 하나라데 등난지 붙이면서 마트 쇼나 자도 하나라데 되는 니바는 그라리 다스 소소소 나는 라라르스.
There are historical examples of individuals who have attained enlightenment based upon these practices. One of the most famous in the Buddhist tradition is an Indian king whose name was Indrabhuti, and it is traditionally said that he relied upon 500 of his queens every day and 500 of his queens every night for 6 years. And through this process attained enlightenment because his practice was pure. In Tibet we have examples of lay figures such as Marpa the translator, who was married. In fact, he had a total of 8 wives, all of whom were his consorts in this kind of yogic practice. And he is accredited with having attained Buddhahood in a single lifetime, during that very lifetime, largely as a result of these kinds of yogic practice which he undertook. And so the paths exist. It's a question of whether the individual is capable of meeting the challenge of putting those techniques into use in the proper way. If a person simply thinks that sex is tantra per se, and simply engages in sexual intercourse or sexual activity thinking, oh, this is tantra, they're missing the point. And in fact, they may be doing themselves a great deal of harm. From the point of view of the Vajrayana practice, there are some of the most important, the most crucial guidelines for tantric practice are what are known as the 14 root downfalls. They're couched in a negative sense, in the sense that to commit these or to indulge in these is a downfall or constitutes an obstruction, an impediment in tantric practice. And the fifth of these involves the misunderstanding of sex and the indulgence in sex, especially the experience of the ordinary experience of orgasm, which constitutes a great loss of energy, which from the point of view of Tantra could be harnessed and cultivated in a far more profitable way for the enlightenment of the individual. And so from the point of view of formal tantric practice, the ordinary experience of sex, particularly the experience of orgasm, constitutes an impediment to the path rather than an enhancement of it. And so for someone to misunderstand the point and say, Tantra is all about sex, therefore sex equals Tantra, is missing the point. It really is a question of whether the individual is capable of that integrity of practice in order to bring those forces to bring them to bear and to channel them into